This is Short-Term Rental Management, the show that is all about short-term rental property management with your host, yours truly, Luke Carl. Showtime! Showtime! Cashflow Carl, the Reverend of Real Estate, the Shaman of Short-Term, the man with too many nicknames. It's Short-Term Rental Management. Fantastic show today. Got my buddy Dale from the UK. He has a property management company, does nothing but short terms, and they currently have over 900 units. He also has a property under management that was built in 1310. Unbelievable. That is a long time ago. Great conversation about process, procedure, systems, scaling, etc. And wonderful to have Dale on the program today. And we will introduce him after a word from this week's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Short-Term Rental Listing Advice. Join this Facebook group and post your listing to get advice from other hosts, including myself, on how you can improve your listing. Or just post your property so you can show off. Join us at strlistingadvice.com. That's strlistingadvice.com. Here we are. Here we go. Short-term rental management, and happy to be here with Dale Smith. Dale is a rock star. 900 units. You've got the unit count record for short-term rental management. So congratulations there. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are and what we do.
Cool. Yeah. No. Thanks for having me on. So we're based over in the United Kingdom. So as you mentioned, just over 900 vacation rental management properties under management at the moment, grown pretty quickly. So our Host and Stay brand was founded in December 2018. So we had 9 properties at that point in time, 9 vacation rentals. So we've scaled from 9 to 900 in the last 4.5 years. Our ambition is to keep on growing that, so we want to get to 5,000 properties by the end of 2025. So we've got still a long way to go, but say we're growing rapidly from an organic point of view. Acquisition is kind of high on our agenda as well, and we are end-to-end management, so everything from booking generation, marketing, 24/7 guest communications. We've got our own in-house maintenance team, in-house housekeeping team. We employ just over 350 people in the business at the moment. So, we are management in the true sense of management.
350.
Yep.
Employees. Okay. Geographic location, like square miles. Are you use kilometers? How big of an area are we dealing with?
So we essentially mainly cover the north of England. So if you take Scottish border, so from kind of south of Edinburgh down to the middle of England, so sort of Birmingham area. So you've probably got 200 miles north to south in terms of what we cover, and then about 200 miles as well, east to west across the country. So we're in places like Newcastle, North Yorkshire, Leeds, Liverpool, Birmingham. So they're some of the kind of the bigger cities that you might have heard of ultimately. So we've still got plenty of geographic locations for us to grow into ultimately.
So let's say you're doing hiring a new cleaner or a team of cleaners, I guess it would probably be, and they're 200 miles away. You are hiring them in-house, and it's really no different than if they were right next door, or how's that facilitated?
Yeah, so in the business we have 2 people full-time. All they do is recruit housekeepers. So daily basis, running job adverts, LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts, job sites, Indeed, etc. Looking for housekeepers and advertise for housekeepers. They'll be onto the phone to those housekeepers, booking in then face-to-face interviews, trial cleans. So we have a pretty regimented process that we're consistently going through on housekeeper recruitment. So, and again, based on our current numbers, we need to recruit 10 new housekeepers per week is the numbers that we have to hit to keep up with our growth trajectory and hit our seasonal numbers as well. Ultimately, then when a housekeeper comes onto our platform, we've got certain training protocols we'll go through. We have a pretty systemized process of what that training and onboarding looks like through on-the-ground training, online training regimes they'll go through. And then ultimately, once they're ready to take on a changeover, as we would call them, we use Breezeway as our kind of task management solution to really then manage and monitor, the organisation of those changeovers, to do the check-in afterwards. So every time a housekeeper completes a changeover, that generates a report that they must complete. Once that changeover is completed, our system will kind of scan that report and we'll verify it. We then also trigger out an email to the owner of that property that lets them know their property's been cleaned, and it gives them a nice PDF report they can access online that shows them the outcome of it as well.
I'm sorry, the software, I think I missed that. Is it in it? You have your own software, or are you using Resort Clean?
Breezeway, it's called.
Breezeway. Okay.
Breezeway, yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating that Breezeway can facilitate such a large organization. That's wonderful. How many cleaners are quitting a week?
So we'll turn about 15 or 20% of our cleaning staff on a perpetual basis. So it'll ebb and flow. We'd expect to see a few more drop off in the summer when it's higher pressure, higher volume. We'll retain a bit more through the winter, but across a year, around 15 to 20% is the percentage we'll lose. Some of that's quite cyclical, I think, by the nature of, the people you've got within those roles. Some of them are just moving to other jobs of a similar level of pay. And actually some of those people we'll see come back to us in 18 months, 24 months time. They're kind of going through a cycle of working for different similar type businesses. And then some people ultimately, if they're not hitting the standards, then we'd be exiting people out of the business if they're not hitting what our high expectations are in terms of cleanliness and following process ultimately.
What's the process to find out if they're hitting? I mean, with so many properties and so many employees, how do you even know if they're hitting the checking all the boxes?
So we would always just monitor basically the guest cleaning scores that we're getting back, guest review scores. So we're aiming for 9 out of 10 on our guest cleanliness rating, and you think we're completing probably around 4,000 to 4,500 changeovers on a monthly basis. So 9 out of 10 for us on that volume is a pretty high standard. I think if you look, actually, we were with Booking.com recently, and for the size of our business in terms of number of listings, we have the best cleaning score on Booking.com in the UK in terms of on volume, which I think comes back down to that regimented process around it, systems and process on being able to deliver that. And ultimately, if we've got a member of the housekeeping team that isn't delivering on that score, we have a 3-step process to manage that. So, if we get a poor review, they go through retraining. If they get a poor review again, they'll go through kind of a more disciplinary type process. If they get a 3rd strike on a poor review, then that's when we would look at exiting them from the business because they're not hitting that standard. So that's why that consistency of recruitment is actually key, because if someone isn't to standard, I speak to lots of property management businesses where they feel like they kind of have to stick with the housekeepers they've got because they're difficult to come by and difficult to get hold of. But if they're not hitting the standard, then it's going to reflect poorly on obviously brand and reviews, which then impacts bookings and revenue generation and all sorts of different stuff. For me, really, the housekeeping is, the single biggest and most important part of the business to get right.
Let's back this whole thing up. How did this all start? Did you own a couple of your own houses and had success with it and then just started bringing other people on, or how did it work?
Yeah, so our background is actually in kind of standard residential letting. So the type of stuff I think, you guys in North America would call single family.
Long-term rental.
Yes, long-term rental. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Long-term rental. So then in 2017, we bought a property that we turned into a vacation rental, just purely off location, right by the beach, sea views, great property. So we thought, right, let's have a go at vacation rental and ultimately see if we get better returns from it, right? So we were always looking as property investors, where could we get better returns? And when we were doing that, we were looking for a vacation rental management company that we would use to manage that property. And we couldn't find one in the north of England that we felt offered value. My background's in sales and marketing with the mix of operations. So we started doing it ourselves. So we, got the professional photography done, threw it up on Airbnb, Booking.com, started to generate bookings. So we kind of evolved into the management of our own property and then felt like there was a gap in the market for that, which then has led us down the track of a full blown management solution, which we essentially felt was missing as a service in the kind of local area initially that we serviced, but ultimately now we're a missing link in the UK market. Really is what we're now aiming for.
Okay, and so I mean it's fascinating. So you talked platforms briefly. Are you using Airbnb, Vrbo? Is it mostly your own website? Do you have percentages or just something off the top of your head?
Yeah. So top 5 for us. So Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, TripAdvisor, and Expedia. We use Marriott, we use Plum Guide. So, we use every channel we possibly can for the extra, couple of percent that we can gain. In terms of breakdowns, we're heavily Booking.com market in where we operate in the United Kingdom. So we're around 50 to 55% of bookings coming through Booking.com. We're then around 20% coming through Airbnb, about 20% direct, and then the rest is made up kind of, 1% and 2% from the other channels, really. Those the 3 key for us is Airbnb and Booking.com, and then direct. And we obviously want to grow that direct contribution. So for us being at 20% direct bookings today, we want to grow that to 50% over the next few years. We feel like 50% is the kind of right balance. If we're bringing 50% of our traffic in through the OTAs and the channels, and then trying to retain those guests through a good CRM and marketing journey, and then driving 50% of bookings via our own host and stay platform, which a lot of that is coming through repeat bookings, but obviously driving through paid social, paid search advertising, bigger brand build stuff that we do in the UK as well, because we're a heavily domestic market. So over 90% of our guests are actually UK travelers staying within the UK. We've not got a massive overseas traveler contingent coming into us. So it's very much a domestic market.
Yeah, 900 properties for a long-term rental management company, at least here in the United States, is really not that huge. I've dealt with several on my own properties that were, up in the 1,500 range pretty easily. But the thing about this is they're spread out, so that it's not like they're all right next door to each other. So let's talk about these locations. Are there, is it a mixture of vacation towns and metro areas and neighborhoods, and how does that all work?
Yeah, so we're across the short-term rental, vacation rental stuff. We've got kind of key locations. So North Yorkshire as an area is our key area. So of our 900, about 500 are in that area. So they're still relatively spread out. You would still have 50, 60, 90 miles between properties. So from a logistics point of view, it's not the easiest, but we're significantly more condensed than I guess you would deal with possibly in the North American market. But yeah, we'd have key locations where we've got heavy concentration of properties, and then you might have long drive times between those clusters. So how we try to structure it is we would always have what we call a housekeeping warehouse, where we'd operate housekeeping and maintenance operations from. And then essentially we would cover a 60-mile radius around those. So if you take what we do in the north of England, we have 6 of those locations that then cover 60 miles from each of them. So that enables us to have that geographic spread to be able to service the properties from a housekeeping and maintenance. Obviously, from a guest relations and owner relations point of view, it doesn't matter, where the properties are, for us to be able to handle bookings, generate bookings, handle guest reviews and guest messaging and guest phone calls. We can do that. We can do that at scale from anywhere, really. So it's the on the ground services that we need to be cute with from a geographic point of view.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm getting at is from a regulation standpoint, does that exist? Are a lot of these in areas where every house in the neighborhood is also a vacation home and you're just competing with other property managers? Or are you in areas where somebody lives next door and they're really annoyed that somebody's got a keg of beer in their front yard?
Yeah, a bit of a mix, to be honest. So some of the locations will be heavily tourist, and that's what people are used to. But then you've got some which are a real blend between residential properties and tourist properties. So that's where as you point out, that you would throw up some more of the potential issues with local residents. But most of the areas we operate in will be reliant on tourism to a certain degree. So if you take my hometown of Saltburn, we've got about 110 properties within Saltburn, which is a pretty small town, and has a big mix of residential and tourism. But also the town knows that it is reliant on that tourism in providing jobs, in providing revenue to local businesses. So there's a real blend between the two. If you took tourism away from Saltburn, you wouldn't be left with an awful lot in terms of jobs and revenue coming into that kind of market area. So it's trying to get that right balance between tourism playing a part and driving that local economy and not annoying the local residents too much that you're kind of a wanted man, if you know what I mean.
Is there an element of that? I mean, are you dealing with police and tickets or something like that? Or
No, not really, because we operate one urban market, which is Liverpool. So that's our only really city centre market where you've got more of that stuff going on in terms of dealing with parties and noise violations and drinking and that type of stuff. Most of our other areas are very coastal and rural. So the type of clientele and guest clientele that you've got coming through are relatively peaceful from that point of view. We don't deal with a whole host of parties, guest damage, noise violations. We're pretty cool from that point of view. It's not too bad. If we were operating more areas like Liverpool, if we were operating exclusively in kind of London city centre, Manchester, Leeds, kind of these bigger tier one cities, then you're going to be dealing with more of those type of issues. Whereas where we are coastal, rural, our average demographic, our average booker is typically like female, mid-40s is our average lead booker. So we're pretty cool from that point of view.
How are you sourcing new properties, new clients? Just advertising, or how do you get these new clients?
Yeah, so we do a real mix. So we do a lot of digital advertising. So a lot of advertising through Google paid search, Bing paid search, targeting essentially holiday home management, vacation rental management in specific areas. Paid social, so Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, Instagram ads, again, targeting certain demographics in certain regions. And then to be fair, we do quite a lot of what I would call above the line marketing. So we're trying to build our brand in the UK. We are currently the 7th biggest operator in the UK. You've got 3 operators who are the biggest, who are kind of 15,000 to 25,000 units, and they've effectively consolidated the market over the last 5 years. So we're number 7 at the moment. Our ambition is to get up to that number 4 slot by the end of 2025 at the 5,000 unit mark. So we're investing a lot in brand from that point of view. So we do a lot of kind of football or soccer sports sponsorships in certain areas, which is obviously, soccer in the UK, as you can imagine, is the kind of most viewed sport. So we do a lot to raise our brand profile and awareness from that point of view. We've got pretty healthy marketing budgets. We'll spend just over 1.2 million this year on marketing to drive, homeowner acquisition, but also drive, brand and guest bookings as well. And for us, that kind of plays into our 2 and 3 year plan on continuing the expansion that we've been on.
Wait a minute, you're just so nonchalant about the 1.2 million marketing budget. Where did that number come from? And it's just so matter of fact. This is what you sat down at the beginning of the year. This is how much we have, and that's it. And then
So for this year, that is effectively planned into the budget. So we spent just under $1 million last year. So it's increasing as we grow, but a lot of that is playing into what our long-term numbers are in terms of, we should be around 1,200, 1,300 units by the end of this year with what's in the pipeline between now and the end of the year and a couple of acquisitions. We need to grow that to sort of 2,500 by the end of next year, which then up to our 5,000 number by the end of 2025. So, that comes at a cost of investment in marketing and raising that brand profile. So that 1.2 million we'll spend this year is factored into our 2 and 3 year run rate on what that growth looks like, and it fits within our business plan of what we're willing to make from an EBITDA point of view this year. And ultimately, there's a bit of sacrifice in that, and saying, I could essentially take probably $750,000 out of that marketing budget and not see the impact directly this year, but I would see the impact next year in terms of not being able to keep up with that constant growth. We've grown it from a revenue point of view. We've we've 2 to 2.5x our revenue every year for the last 3 years. So it's trying to keep that same pace going, which comes with heavy investment ultimately.
It's fascinating. You're really good at this. Okay, so let me ask you. This really wouldn't work in America, I don't think. We only really have Evolve and Vacasa in the United States. And we have a couple other ones. And I think it's because of geographic location, but I just don't see a property manager being able to have 5,000 doors and be successful unless they're doing this big nationwide model like Evolve, which Evolve doesn't even deal with guests, So how are you making that work? Is it because the UK is just geographically a different animal, or?
Yeah, I think geographically it's much simpler in the UK. Like, look, the UK is as big as California ultimately. Yeah. So if we took California and said, right, we want to monopolize that California market and really drive that, then logistically you've got a chance of doing that. I think the on the ground team and the operations is where I believe the kind of point of difference is. So I think, we see so much in the vacation rental management space of talking about technology and scaling through technology. Obviously, AI is a big thing now. But fundamentally, in terms of getting the business right and being able to grow it and control quality, it comes down to that those on the ground people and being able to manage that geographically. If we just said, okay, we're going to go, if we take Cornwall as an example, which is right in the bottom left opposite corner of the UK to where we're based, if we just said, okay, we're going to go start and operate in that area, that would be a really difficult thing to do from a management point of view. It's like us being based in Lake Tahoe and trying to manage something in San Diego. Just geographically, it doesn't work. So for us to continue growing, we've got to map that correctly from a geographic point of view, which plays back into those 60-mile radiuses for us. The way, if you take a map of the UK, we're systematically working our way down the country, plotting out those areas so that we can take over an area, grow into that area, then jump into the next area. So again, using California as an example, we're effectively in somewhere like Lake Tahoe as our base at the moment, and we're working our way down to Sacramento, down the North Cal coast, and then systematically working our way down, but building those on the ground teams underneath us as we go. Because in the UK, and I don't know whether the US is a bit different, in the UK, all of our competitors, any that have got scale, all just want to outsource the operations. They want to work with third-party housekeeping companies, third-party maintenance companies, and all of a sudden they're giving control on quality and process and everything else away to third parties, which ultimately for me is where a lot of the value is in the business, right? Our property owners want to know which housekeeper it is that's going. They want to know we've got that under control. So ultimately that starts and stops with us. And actually, if you look at it from a brand reputation point of view, when a guest checks into a property, their only real touch point with us as a brand and is how clean and well presented that property is. If we get that wrong, then their perception of our brand is that our brand is a poor brand because the property isn't right. If we give that to third parties at scale, then we're effectively passing our brand over to third parties that we've got no control of, which is why we believe it should be in-house ultimately.
These six competitors that are right now a little higher than you, they're also short-term only?
Yeah, all short-term only as well, yeah. So if you look at the UK market, so there's only really us and the other six above us, so 900 units upwards. The other 2 or 3 players that are a bit bigger than us are around 1,200 and 1,500 units, and you've got this massive void to like 15,000 units now because of consolidation over the last 5 years. As you go down over, you've got loads of players that are around 50 to 100 units is the typical management size that you would find in the UK market. 50 to 100 units under management, all short-term rental.
Are you getting clients because you're approaching them saying, hey, if you've got a house you rent out, we can make more money by putting it on booking.com than you could if you put a lease on it?
Yeah, totally. We would do that, definitely. We've also got owners coming to us because, short-term rental, again, last 5 years has grown in popularity and people want to explore the option of short-term rental to see if it does make them more money. And also, unfortunately, in the UK, we're seeing lots of regulation on long-term rental that is making landlords and property owners, effectively want to get out of that space. It's becoming almost too onerous, and for a lot of landlords, they're kind of the payoff for how much owners on them now, it doesn't make sense to be in the long-term rental game anymore. Unfortunately, because I don't agree that should be right. I think from a government point of view, we've got that wrong in the UK at the moment, and it needs addressing. So you've got a lot of people who would be in long-term rental, might have been long-term rental for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then move into short-term rental because it effectively gives them more control of their property and their asset.
This episode is brought to you by the premier short-term rental Facebook group, Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. We have nearly 50,000 members. This is the biggest independently owned and operated STR Facebook group, and it has been curated by yours truly, Cashflow Carl. Join us on Facebook. Search the groups for Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. That's Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth on Facebook. So what are a lot of your units like? Are they small houses that are inexpensive, or do you have $5,000 a night houses, or everything?
Everything really. So we only do 4 and 5 star. So we're typically upper quartile in terms of property quality. But we've got everything from studio apartments through to 14 bedroom houses that would be, as you say, $3,000-$5,000 pounds, euros a night ultimately. So a real spectrum. So essentially from $100 a night to $5,000 a night, our portfolio would cover that. And again, we want diversification across those, but as long as it's still quality product. So it's got to be, if it's a studio apartment, it's still got to be an upper quartile, top 25% of the market studio apartment.
Fascinating. How many do you own?
We own 25 at the moment ourselves.
What do those built, look like?
Bit of a mix again, to be honest, because again, I'm a believer of trying to diversify from that point of view. So we've got everything from studios to 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom apartments to 3 bedroom houses. I think our biggest at the moment is a 7 bedroom house, actually, that was built in the 1300s, if you can believe that. So pretty old. So yeah, that's our largest that we own ourselves at the moment. But again,
tell me about that. I have some older properties as well. Well, old for here. I have a house built in the 1840s. I have an apartment building built in 1911. And they are they're a lot of work. In a good way. And my old house, it's actually 2 houses on the same property, and it's not a rental. But mid 1840s. It's getting new bathrooms right now. So when you rip the bathroom out, when you rip the shower out, you're just kind of like, oh crap, what's it gonna look like under there? Am I really opening a can of worms, or is it gonna be So 1300s. Stop. So let's hold on. Let's talk about that for a minute. That's extremely fascinating. Tell me how that works.
Yeah, so I mean that property has had a lot added to it over the years, but the core house is from 1310, I think the exact date was, and it's had some additions to it over the years. Came into our portfolio midway through last year, so we did probably about 4 months of renovation to it to get it back up to standard. To then let out. It's quite nice. It's got a lot of ground. It's got a swimming pool as well, so it's got some really nice features, but it's got a lot of history that goes with it as well. And actually, we've got that one plus one other older one, and I can't remember what the date is on the other older one. It'd be probably 1700s, and that one actually, when you go up into the loft space, you've got all of the original walls that are literally built out of kind of clay and straw. So if you can imagine, that wasn't even originally built out of kind of brick, which is pretty amazing. So when you go up into the loft area, which we lock off so guests can't get up there, but you can see all the original structure, which is the first time I've seen that. It's really fascinating.
So most of the original stuff has been like built inside of, and it's a different structure now?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. You've still got some of the original brickwork on that one is still in existence, but it's been added to over the years. So you've got probably, I would say about 50% of the building is still that original structure. It's been re-roofed at a certain point in time. It had a tower that was added to it in about the 1600s, which has had different things. It had a church in that aspect of it. Then it was turned into a school. And then now it's actually 2 floors within that little addition. One's a bedroom and one's like a family room. So it's got some little nuances. It's got kind of the circular staircase that goes up to the parapet roof where it has the flag on it and things. So again, like a bit of a kind of castle feature. So yeah, pretty unique. Pretty unique in the general marketplace, but obviously in the UK, we've still got quite a lot of properties that probably fit into that bracket.
That's awesome. Fascinating. If those walls could talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, I love it. So why 5,000? I mean, it seems like you're probably doing really well in life. Why go through the headache of 5xing the property or the business at this point?
Yeah. I guess we want to get up to that fourth position in the UK marketplace in terms of size and kind of get a bit closer to the bigger players in the market. But I think our real drive is actually doing it a little bit differently. We see ourselves different to the current main players in the market in the sense that, kind of it's that management piece, right? We believe the rest of the UK marketplace right now is not essentially managing the properties and providing the management service. They're essentially generating bookings, a little bit of guest relations, and then outsourcing that kind of management piece. So we feel there's quite a big gap in the UK marketplace for a true property manager that is delivering a service to property owners end to end. And ultimately, we want to grow that out because we believe that's the right model. And it may be that that model is transferable overseas. We're looking at 2 overseas locations at the moment, one in Europe, one in the Middle East, because again, we do believe our model can transfer overseas. So we'll play around with that a little bit over the coming sort of 18 to 24 months. And ultimately, we think there's gaps in that management piece and also the user journey as well. So, you touched on earlier about how we're perceived, let's say at local level with residents. So we're just about to launch our host and stay app. And one big part of what will come with that host and stay app is something we're calling a stay local card. So we're working with independent retailers, so family owned, independently operated coffee shops, restaurants, retailers in the kind of towns and cities where we operate our short-term rentals. And we want to drive footfall into those local independents, but to be able to offer incentives to guests to be able to do that. So, if you stay with Host and Stay, you get access to a Stay Local card, and that might give you 10% off in the Italian restaurant in Saltburn. It might give you free coffee on a Wednesday in the cafe that's down the road from your vacation rental. So we're really trying to be the glue between the inbound tourism and the local independents to make sure that tourism is having a positive impact on those local economies. Because again, we see too much of what we would kind of call like kind of carbon high streets, what we don't like seeing in the UK, which is you walk down the high street and you see, a Starbucks and a McDonald's and a Burger King and a Taco Bell. Like, we want the local independents to flourish in the areas that we're working with because they're the ones that are really truly driving, money back into those local economies. So again, we've got a real passion for delivering that, and that's also part of why we want to build that volume up to that 5,000 number. Is doing some of these things on the way to that. Whereas if we said, okay, we're stopping at the 1,000, we could implement some of that, but it's going to limit what impact we can actually have on the overall marketplace, really.
What's the multiple of EBITDA for a property management company in the UK?
So all the data we've looked at, most of them, it varies by portfolio size, right? So the bigger the portfolio, the more market share I've got, the higher the multiple of EBITDA. The transactions that we've looked at in recent years are between sort of 10 and 15 times EBITDA.
Wow.
But again, that varies by portfolio size. And again, we would also view it on, you would look at an EBITDA range, but we'd also look at an enterprise value per contract. So, for every property you've got under contract, what that value is worth as well. And we would look at both of them ultimately.
And would you, I guess the end goal would be to sell, but does the time need to be right? Are you looking to build it to 5 to sell? Is that the goal, or what is the goal?
Not really. We've not got a definitive timeline on exit. So we're a family business, and there will inevitably over the coming years probably be exit points for the family in some regard in terms of my mum, my dad, my sister, etc. I think for me is the longer term vision of seeing this kind of build over the years to come. I see myself still building this business in some shape or form, probably beyond the 3-year goal, especially if we start to go overseas as well.
Oh, you're going to go nationwide. You're going to go worldwide.
Yeah, that's hopefully at some point in time. At some point.
Oh, wow. Wow. I would not want anything to do with that, my friend. Let's talk about the day-to-day. This is a big organization, 350 employees. What is your role day-to-day? Because right now you've got, while we've been on this call, you've had, 14 items a break in the homes, right? So you're not dealing with that, right? But what does your day-to-day look like?
So I'm overseeing so my role as CEO, so I'm overseeing the business from that point of view. I've still arguably got too many direct reports. So that's an evolution for me in the business. We brought in a number of additional senior team members onto the board the early part of this year. So we're kind of on our journey on that evolution of bringing other senior people into the business to essentially make sure we can continue on that growth journey. But for me, very much overseeing from a strategic point of view. I'll still heavily get involved on process and systemization. That's kind of one of my key focus areas at the moment. So I'll be looking with each of our heads of department and saying, right, if we're going to go from 1,000 to 5,000 properties, any processes or systems we're putting into the business today or looking at putting into the business or developing, they've got to sustain that growth, right? I don't want a solution that goes into the business today that only lasts for the next 6 months. That's no good. It's got to be a solution that can take us from 1,000 properties to 5,000 properties. So a lot of my time is invested at the moment on making sure those processes are going into the business and that they are sustainable and can take us on that journey. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest things, because ultimately that is continuing to build the foundations that enables us to cope with that growth. If we don't get that right, then at a certain point in time, we're going to get to X number of properties and fall over because those processes aren't right. Or we need to keep putting more and more people into the business to keep that growth. And again, all that does is dwindle margins as you get bigger, and rather than increasing margins as you get bigger.
Fantastic. You're making my job too easy over here, man. Let's talk about your wife. Wife is involved in the organization. What is her role, and how does that work?
So my wife, so she is head of onboarding and marketing. So she effectively, from the marketing that attracts new property owners into us, attracts new guests into us, and then the onboarding of those properties to the point that they hit the host and stay website, push off to booking.com, Airbnb. She oversees all of that, and she's a brand police, right? So she's the first person to tell me if she sees a property that's in our system that's coming on that isn't on brand standard, like, she'll be on me straight away and say, why is this property coming on board? Those ones that you're like, it might not quite be in that top 25%, but we could do with that one to get to our objective for the month. I'll be saying, okay, yeah, let's squeeze it through. She'll be like, no, it's not going on board. It's not on brand. So she's fantastic from that point of view. And to be fair, we work very well together as well. So I talked to lots of people in business who are, got varying relationships across family and spouses and what have you, but we work pretty well together, to be honest.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, my wife and I are in this thing together as well, and I'm just curious how you handle that dynamic. Do you is there any system in place, a morning meeting or a weekly meeting where you kind of separate church and state?
Yeah, so we do a monthly meeting specifically on, obviously we talk every day, right, and on the evening and whatever, like work doesn't stop in our house, but we have a specific monthly meeting where we'll go through the same agenda points and track objectives, etc. So we do know at least we've got that set time where we can go through the specific things that we need to from that point of view. But outside of that, it's fairly ad hoc on a daily basis, and on an evening, once the kids are in bed, we've got 2 little girls, one 2-year-old and one 4-year-old. So once the kids are in bed, inevitably, work crops up and
it does. It creeps back in. Okay.
Yeah, it does. We're still, we live and breathe the business at this point in time, but we both enjoy it. So, it's good from that. I
gotta imagine that causes a little bit of tension here and there, but I understand. I understand why you're doing it. You're immersed. You're killing yourself, I would imagine, to try and build this thing to be the best that it can be. And so for that, I definitely applaud you there. You gotta bust your ass.
Yeah, totally.
Now you mentioned I want to backtrack just a little bit with the short terms and the kind of the pain point there with long term rentals. Do you have any interest in folks wanting to stay a little? What is your average nightly stay, and do you do anything with a lease at all?
So we do. Our average length of stay is 3.3 nights at the moment. That's our exact average. We've seen that creep up post-COVID. So pre-COVID, we would have been under 3 nights per stay. So that has definitely increased. We don't do, because our market is heavily tourism, we don't do an awful lot of longer lease stuff. We will do it. So we will do longer guest stays. So if we have, a little bit of corporate travel, we might have a 10, a 14, a 30-day stay, something like that. But we don't do an awful lot of that. We, as another part of our business, so our host and stay business is the biggest business within our group of businesses, but we actually have multiple brands in our overall organization. And we do have, similar to kind of what you were saying, I think yourself, it was that we do have a real estate agency arm, and we do some long-term rental stuff as well. So if we were getting something that was a pure long-term rental, that would get passed over to one of our sister companies that would deal with that. And we have a couple of hundred properties under that business that just purely do long-term rental, true leases, 6-month, 12-month leases, etc. But we don't do an awful lot of that in the host and stay business.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a completely different animal, and then you got to deal with lawyers and evictions, and well, at least you do here anyway. I don't know how it works there.
Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah, 100%, totally different beast. So we sit that as a completely separate business unit. It's got a completely different team. But yeah, so we play around with that because essentially that was our starting point. That was our background. That was our bread and butter ultimately, several years ago. And then we've developed more on the short-term rental side of it, just because it's, in my eyes anyway, a little bit more exciting than the long-term rental stuff.
Way sexier. Absolutely way sexier. Okay, Breezeway, let's talk tech here. We got Breezeway going on. What else? Management software, pricing software, etc.
Yep. So we've got Guesty is our property management system.
Guesty Pro.
Guesty Pro. Yep. So we've been using Guesty since late 2018. So say we had 8 or 9 properties when we switched on Guesty. So they've grown with us. And
how does that work? Do they know who you are? Do you have a hotline?
Yeah, we've got a pretty good relationship with Guesty.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a pretty good relationship with Guesty. So, we've been through a few contract negotiations and everything else with Guesty, but, we still do believe they're the best in the marketplace from a PMS point of view. And to be quite honest, we're at a size now that us changing PMS is a pretty big deal in terms of it's more than just cost saving. There's so many different factors to it. Their roadmap is very exciting of what they've got in the future. And we've got capability in house to build our own tech. We have a small tech team. So, Guesty is our property management system, but if we need certain little solutions, then we'll build those solutions, on top of Guesty ourselves. So we have got that capability as well. But in the main, we'll use third-party solutions that are good at what they're doing, and then we'll use our own tech to kind of pull those together. So, a little bit like we were talking earlier, we have an integration between, so Guesty and Breezeway has a standard integration that comes like an off-the-shelf integration between those two products, right? But we have created our own integration that we take data from Guesty, we do some manipulation stuff with that, and then we push that back into Breezeway. So we'll always have kind of our own third-party connections into the different systems that we have where we're doing our own little things. So as we talked about with Breezeway, where we send an email to every owner after a changeover has been completed with a button on there that allows them to click through to see their completion report. That's not off the shelf. We've kind of bespoke that little process, but it's using the Guesty API and the Breezeway API to do that. So if you look at our tech stack, we've got Breezeway on operations, we've got Guesty as property management system, where we were using beyond pricing. We're just in the process of moving to Wheelhouse for dynamic pricing. Again, we were looking for a few different features which Beyond didn't have and and hasn't built out. That they're on their roadmap, they're still not there. So we've made a choice to switch pricing provider. We use a system called Fixed Flow for all of our maintenance and compliance and document logging for things like gas safety, fire risk assessments, electrical certificates, all of that type of stuff we store within fixed flow. So we've got, probably off the top of my head, probably about 10 to 12 different systems we use within our ecosystem. But then we have a central data repository which sits at the center, and we draw all of the data from each of those systems down into our own database. So we've got as close as we can of a single data center of a view of what's going on ultimately, and everything that we want to do going forward we'll be building it up on that model. What we don't want to have is a database in Guesty that we have to maintain and a database in Breezeway. Ultimately, if we change something in our central database, that has to update in Guesty, update in Breezeway, update in Fixed Flow, etc. So getting that system architecture right is kind of one of the big things on our tech roadmap at the moment.
Is that your favorite part of the business?
Yeah, I like technology. I love the business. I love the business as a whole. I like the technology side because, if you haven't gathered by now, I'm quite into kind of process and problem solving. That's what I enjoy doing. So the technology bit fascinates me. So back to that point we were talking about processes, I like to look and say to my guys, right, you talk me through a process for you at the moment that is really manual. And then, right, how do we convert that into a tech process so that it no longer needs to be manual? So all of a sudden, that person that was spending 2 hours a day on that, all of a sudden we've saved that time and we can refocus that 2 hours a day into another part of the business that's going to, move us forward ultimately. And that's where I really like the challenge of joining the technology with the operational problem and solving that with a good process and technology supporting and kind of, pushing that process forward, I suppose.
Okay, Breezeway, Guesty Pro, what else? How are we pricing these things?
So we were using Beyond Pricing. We're now using Wheelhouse.
Oh, Wheelhouse. Okay.
Yep.
Are you, do you have a VP of pricing or something like that?
So we have what we would call a commercial manager. So I've got a commercial director who oversees acquisitions plus margin retention, property pricing ultimately. He's got a commercial manager underneath him, and then he's got two what we would call pricing managers who will manipulate pricing on a daily basis. So you've got a dedicated team of 3 people that all they're doing every day is looking at pricing, occupancy, length of stay, campaign analysis, etc. So 3 dedicated people in that role, plus a commercial director that they report into, who's overseeing that strategy essentially.
And Wheelhouse is working for you. It's very uncommon in the U.S. Everybody uses Price Labs here.
Yeah, so we've looked at each. So we were with Beyond Pricing. We were going to move to Price Labs, and then we looked at the Wheelhouse product. And we really like what they've developed. That fits into some of the gaps that we feel we had missing when we were using when we were using Beyond Pricing. And there was a few other elements that
they offered you a better deal.
No, do you know what? All 3 of those suppliers are pretty much the same in terms of what they give us on a price per property basis.
Okay.
I think we're kind of, based on our volume, we're kind of as low as we can go across suppliers in terms of what's viable until again that portfolio grows a little bit more. So all 3 providers are pretty much the same on pricing. For us, it was just purely down to, does it give us the functionality we believe we need to move us forward? And the difference for us, right, an extra 2 or 3% occupancy in a month for us now, is a pretty big number. Like, 2 or 3% occupancy for us across, we'll do what we're going to do this month. We're going to do probably £4 million in bookings in August. So a 1% gain on that is a pretty big number now. So anything that can give us that incremental gain, we're looking for.
What do you do for money management? How do you keep track of the Stessa or something like that? Or how many bookkeepers do you have?
So we have in-house, our finance team is, off the top of my head, we're probably a team of 8 people in finance. So from CFO to group financial controller, management accountants, admin. So yes, we've got a decent sized team from that point of view, but we do have, our wider business is, I think we're about 18 different legal entities, because across the business as a whole, we have an interior design department, we've got a legal department, we have a construction arm to what we do as well. So for our owners, we provide lots of different services that, again, none of our competitors do. So if you think if someone has just bought a property and they want to turn it into a vacation rental, we have an arm dedicated to the legal side of taking that through with the purchase. We've got a team dedicated to the interior design of that to make sure the property is designed to the best it can be to generate the most amount of revenue. We've got the construction arm, which will refurbish the property to that design specification. So, across that wider group, we've got lots of different services. So essentially a property owner can say to us, right, here's the property, tell me how I'm going to maximize my return on it. We'll facilitate that all the way through in each of those different areas.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so Breezeway, Guesty Pro, Wheelhouse. Anything else? QuickBooks for the bookkeeping, or
we don't. We use Sage for Sage for bookkeeping.
Sage, SAGE.
Yeah, Sage. Yeah, Sage.
Okay. What else?
What else we got? We use FixFlow for maintenance and compliance tracking.
Never heard of it.
FixFlow, FIX-FLO.
Oh, FixFlow. Okay.
Yeah.
Briefly describe that to me. What does it do?
So FixFlow, so that effectively is where we log all of the jobs. So let's say guest reports some damage in the property, and one of our maintenance guys needs to go out, or a guest is reporting a leak in the property. That would get logged in the FixFlow system. Our maintenance technician would get that alert, go out to the job, log the photographs. We would invoice the job back out to the owner through that system. So that does all of our maintenance, our on the ground maintenance management, scheduling, etc.
Okay.
Same as Guesty has a bit of that functionality. Breezeway has a bit of it, but FixFlow is a true maintenance system, if you like. So we use that specifically because, again, we're pretty detailed on those different departments. What else have we got? So we use a system called Superhog for all of our guest screening.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Superhog I think is relatively well known in the US. What else have we got in that tech stack? I think that's the core ones I would have said. We probably have a few others that I can't think of the top of my head, but that's pretty much our core tech stack, I would have thought.
Okay, great. Superhog. What are you using for that specifically? You're just a background check type of thing?
Exactly. Yeah, damage waiver. So background check on the guest and facilitation of a damage waiver. So, damage waiver sales are a big part of our business ultimately to make sure guests are covered. Okay,
wonderful. All right, great. Let's talk horror stories. What do you have for me? What's the worst thing that's ever happened?
Oh, what's the worst one that's ever happened? I mean, horror stories from an operational point of view. I've had plenty where I've been at a wedding and the housekeeping team have missed a clean and had to go down to the property in my tux and get on the hands and knees and get it clean. So I've had plenty of that back in the day. Seen it all in terms of kind of trashed houses after parties and all that type of stuff. I'm trying to think what the worst one would be. I think, yeah, probably a bigger property after a party and just being left in a pretty bad state are some of the worst ones to deal with, really.
Okay. No fires or anything like that?
One fire that I had to attend. So fire, I had a guest put an electric kettle on a gas hob.
On a what?
On a gas hob. So like a gas hob burner. Oh. So they thought it was for whatever reason, I think they have I don't know whether you guys have in the US, like a gas fired kettle so that you would boil water on and you put it on a gas stove to heat the water. So this kettle was a plug-in kettle, like where you press the button and it boils through electricity. They took the electric kettle and put it on a gas hob. So obviously it just went up in flames.
It was plastic. Yeah.
It was plastic. So, and that property was about a 2 minutes around the corner from where I live. So I ran down there myself and got there just before the fire brigade arrived. So that's the one fire, touch wood, that we've had to date. And I was not too far away, thankfully. So yeah, only one fire so far.
Okay, great. All right. Well, what else do we need to know on the way out? Did we miss anything? Fascinating conversation.
I think we've covered quite a few areas there, I think, haven't we?
Okay. What about a book suggestion on the way out the door? Are you a reader?
I am a reader, podcast. So book suggestions, Winning by Tim Grover and Relentless by Tim Grover. They're two of my favorites. I think Tim Grover's fantastic. So anyone that doesn't know Tim Grover, he was he was coach to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. He's had some other athletes as well. So, he's pretty awesome. And podcasts, I do like Andy Frisella is my go-to from a podcast point of view. I'm a big fan of Andy Frisella. Says it how it is and straight to the point. I like a lot of that stuff. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, I've read Relentless. I have not read Winning. So
Winning, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I'll check that out. Well, listen, man, it was wonderful to meet you and wonderful conversation. Well, thank you for thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. So on behalf of Short Term Rental Management, Dale Smith and Cashflow Carl saying, don't overthink it.